This is a story that took place in Albania. A wife dissatisfied with her marriage leaves her husband and her boss leaves, not imagining that life would make her and her lover pay dearly for that choice. And the betrayed husband finds true happiness with a young widow, single mother of 2 children. It all starts with a couple called Mariano and Lorena. The two met through friends. After 4 years of dating, they marry and together affirm their marriage. Mariano was a devoted husband, an honorable, honest and hard-working man who did everything for Lorena and treated her like a true princess. Lorena also loved her husband, but soon that would change. After 8 years of relationship, Mariano wanted to have a child and complete his family. But Lorena was a woman whose desire for motherhood did not cross her mind, and this frustrated Mariano. But Mariano loved Lorena unconditionally and would wait as long as necessary, thinking that she would change her mind and be patient with her. Over time, Lorena started arriving late at her house and no longer paid attention to Mariano. Lorena was cold, distant, and as if she had no interest in him anymore. And when he always brought up the subject of having a child, Lorena got mad and very irritated. One day, when Mariano left his work to go home, he saw Lorena hand in hand and in very intimate moments with an elegant and very refined man in a square. Mariano is shocked by what he sees, and at that moment Mariano decided not to make a fuss and just go home. It turns out that the man Lorena was with was Evandro, Lorena's boss and owner of the company where she worked as his secretary. A few months ago Lorena and Evandro were having an affair and Mariano never suspected his wife. Upon arriving home, Mariano confronts Lorena and says, "Who was the man who was with you in the city square?" A nervous Lorena asks, "What are you talking about? I wasn't with anyone." And Mariano in a serious tone says, "Don't lie to me. I saw you hand in hand and very intimate with a guy looking like a tycoon in the square today. Explain that to me now." And then Lorena, in a mocking and cold way, opens the game and says, "Since you found out, I'll tell you. He's my boss. I've been cheating on you with him for a few months now. I do not love you anymore. I fell in love with him, and I want to part with you and be with him. I want to be happy." Mariano, amazed, then says, "Are you crazy? Lorena, what did I do to you to do this to me?" And Lorena replies, "I'm fed up with this simple life you give me. I want big things and you're too stuck in time. I don't like this life you give me." Then Mariano retorts, "Lorena, I've always done everything for you. I gave you the good and the best. I never let you lack for anything, and so you thank me?" And Lorena replies, "That's life, my dear. File for divorce, get on with your life, and I'll get on with my life with a real man." Mariano's heart breaks into pieces, and the crying man says, "How can Lorena be such a scoundrel? Are you trading me for an adventure? You will ruin your life. Think about what you're doing, so you don't regret it later." Lorena doesn't listen to Mariano. Due to Lorena's insistence, a humiliated Mariano signs the divorce papers, and then the woman packs her bags and leaves Mariano's house, since it was in his name and was an inheritance from Mariano's parents. Mariano is devastated and suffers a lot. It was practically as if the world had fallen on his head. Lorena moves to the mansion of Evandro, and soon they assume their romance and no longer need to hide their affair. Mariano, sad and very disappointed, decided that he would not suffer for Lorena. He saw that the relationship with Lorena was beyond saving, and the first thing he did was destroy all the photos of Lorena and erase her life to move forward. Over time he decided to take up swimming, running and playing sports. Mariano decided that he would not let this end his life. At the same time, Lorena and Evandro lived their fairy tale with parties and expenses. Lorena and Evandro cannot imagine what life is preparing for this unfaithful couple. After a long time after the separation, Mariano was a different person who saw life with different eyes and moved on. One day, at the company where Mariano worked, he meets a new employee named Carolina, a young blonde, pretty woman with clear eyes. Carolina was humble, honorable, honest, and hardworking. She helped her coworkers and was very helpful. Mariano sees the girl and decides to start a friendship with her, and later they start a romance. They seem to get along well. The two started hanging out together, having fun, and she seemed to have feelings for him. Mariano invites her to come to her house to have dinner with him. Carolina accepts the invitation and goes. The relationship began to flow and Mariano seemed in love, but the man never went to Carolina's house, because she never invited him, and that was very strange during those 11 months of relationship. But Mariano respected the girl and didn't want to force her into anything. One day during the weekend when they were off, Mariano saw Carolina playing in a park with a boy and a girl. At that moment, Mariano began to think about several things about Carolina, but he decided not to jump to conclusions and decided to hear from Carolina what she would explain. A week later, then Carolina says, "Mariano, I know you must imagine why I never invited you to my house. But today I'm inviting you to come. I live at this address and I invite you to dinner at my house." Mariano is happy and very moved by the invitation. He gets ready and goes to Carolina's house. It was a simple and humble house and not like his house, which was big and beautiful. But he was happy to be in the home of the woman of his life. Carolina serves dinner. Mariano realized that she was a great cook and then praised her dishes. Carolina at one point decides to open up to Mariano and says, "Mariano, I have strong feelings for you and I think you are an incredible, nice man and a good person. But I can no longer hide from you something that is personal to me, and it wouldn't be fair to deceive you and deceive you." And Mariano nervously says, "But what would it be? Are you married, divorced, or something like that?" And Carolina laughing says, "Calm down. Let me explain." And then Carolina begins to explain herself to Mariano. "I was once married. I'm not divorced like you. I'm a widow. My husband died 3 years ago in a car accident, and the reason why I didn't bring you to my house during these months of relationship is this. I'm a widow and a single mother." Carolina then called her children, a couple of twins, a boy and a 5-year-old girl, the children that Mariano saw playing with Carolina in the park. And Carolina completes, "That's the reason. They are my children and the fruits of the relationship with my late husband. I started to like you and I don't want to force you into anything. Will you want me anyway, or will you leave me for this reason? Whatever your decision, I will respect it. Even if it's just being friends. I want to be honest and true with you. I don't want to deceive you or lie to you because I hate lies. And then, what do you say to me?" Mariano is moved by Carolina's sincerity. This left the man even more in love and with tears in his eyes, but with joy. Mariano then replies, "Carolina, I'm very happy. I liked your sincerity, and that doesn't change anything between us. I love you, and I want to be happy with you. Your sincerity and trust has been my greatest gift." That made Mariano firmer and more secure in his relationship with Carolina. And Mariano confesses that he knew about it, because he saw Carolina playing in the park with these children and praised her for being a good mother and present. So he figured she would make a great wife. Carolina is also amazed and happy that the love of her life has not left her because she is a single mother and a widow. Mariano saw the differences between his ex Lorena and his current Carolina. Lorena was unfaithful, arrogant, and unscrupulous. Carolina was a single mother, but faithful, humble, good-natured, and a great mother. So, from that day on, Mariano began to visit Carolina every day. He won the affection of Diego and Myra, Carolina's children, who he began to love as if they were her own. Mariano was not wrong in that regard. He was a divorced and free man, a man of good character and incredible, who was betrayed by his ex-wife Lorena. Carolina was a widow, free and unencumbered, a good woman and very loving. Diego and Myra began to call Mariano father, and every day the love for those children and Carolina flowed in his heart. And as the relationship developed, Mariano then opens up to Carolina and talks about her life and her failed marriage, about his scoundrel ex-wife and her betrayal with her boss. Carolina feels sorry for Mariano and is outraged by her ex. Carolina then compliment your ex who lost out on leaving a nice guy like you for an adventure. You can be sure that life will demand it, because nothing goes unpunished. And Mariano hugs the woman and replies, "Thank you, Carolina. You made me happy with her support. Now let's move on. You and our children, and further our own children to complete the family." Mariano and Carolina hug, kiss, and go out to enjoy the day with their children, take pictures, play, and the relationship grows stronger. So, after a few months, Mariano asked Carolina and her children to move in with him and suggested putting her house for rent, because he wanted Carolina and her children with him. Carolina agrees to go with the man of her life. Mariano helps to pack Carolina and her children's things and moves into her house, and Carolina's house is put up for rent. And they sell part of the furniture from Carolina's house, and that way they get good money, and also the money from renting Carolina's house helps with expenses. Practically, the bond of true love with Carolina and her children was created, and nothing was going to change that. They were already part of Mariano's life, and his life without them had no meaning anymore. They filled Mariano's life with color and joy. After 2 years of relationship living together at Mariano's house, the man decides to organize a nice dinner at his house and in the presence of his stepchildren. Suddenly, in a moment, Mariano kneels down and says, "Carolina, do you want to marry me, to be my wife and the new lady of this house?" Carolina is thrilled and very happy and accepts Mariano's proposal. Myra and Diego smile and look at the two with joy. After 2 months of preparation for the big day, Mariano and Carolina get married. Everyone was happy with the new couple. Mariano and Carolina have a relationship of much love, affection, trust, and mutual affection. It didn't take long for Carolina to become pregnant with Mariano, and they had a son they named Daniel. After a short time, Carolina became pregnant again, and they had a daughter they named Aurora. What made the union of the couple stronger and very loving? Mariano was happy with his legitimate children Daniel and Aurora and his children Diego and Myra. Even with the birth of Daniel and Aurora, Mariano did not turn his back on his stepchildren, encouraging his stepchildren and their children to be united as siblings. Mariano loved Diego, Myra, Daniel, and Aurora equally and wanted all four to be equal. Carolina was sure she found the man of her life. After 14 years of marriage and marital union, Myra and Diego grew up and were two young people who loved Mariano unconditionally and saw him as their father from the heart and their hero, and their mother as their heroine. Mariano educated, loved, raised, and shaped the character of the two young people to be good people and prepared them for life. Their own stepchildren organized a party to celebrate their stepfather and mother's wedding anniversary, making Mariano and Carolina imitate a wedding again. His stepchildren were doing it out of love and gratitude to Father Mariano. Diego worked at a construction materials store and was studying physical education at. Myra worked in a clothing store and took a nursing course to become a nurse. Daniel was a brilliant student and got good grades, and Aurora was the youngest of the family and the princess of the home, a graceful and very happy girl being the little darling of the family. The union of these four brothers was true, thanks to the good education of Mariano and Carolina with their children, and thanks to the sacrifices of Mariano and Carolina, the education of their stepfather and mother made Diego and Myra great people, loyal to Mariano, and that they truly loved their father from the heart, and Mariano made their mother happy. As both stepchildren were aware that their biological father was deceased, Mariano reciprocates his children's affection by organizing a weekend at the beach. The family has fun and Mariano is very happy about it all. But on that beach, Mariano sees something that would leave him with his mouth open and amazed. He looks to the side and observes a homeless couple, dirty and looking drunk. He recognized and saw who they were. It was his ex-wife Lorena and her lover Evandro. Mariano was left thinking about what could have happened for the two of them to be in such a deplorable and miserable state. And he even thought about approaching the two homeless people to talk, but he quickly changed his mind and decided to return to his family. Arriving home, Mariano asked Diego and Myra to search the internet about a certain company, the company where Lorena worked and where Evandro was the owner. Myra thinks and then says, "Dad, it says here that this company went bankrupt about 11 years ago." She went bankrupt. And Diego adds, according to the records, the owners called Evandro and Lorena went bankrupt due to an embezzlement caused by employees who stole a large amount of money and disappeared from the map. And Myra still says, "That's what happened. Evandro and Lorena lost everything, and to pay the debt, the mansion, cars, everything they had were confiscated by the federal revenue to pay the gap. They were left with nothing. Dad." And Mariano says, "That's all I wanted to know, my children. Thank you very much." Carolina arrives at that moment and asks Mariano, "Love, who were those beggars that you watched for a long time on the beach? I thought it was strange that you were seeing those too." And Mariano asks, "Where are Daniel and Aurora?" And Carolina replied, "Daniel is in the bedroom playing video games and Aurora is playing with our neighbor's daughters in our backyard." And Mariano says, "Then I can confide in you three. Those beggars were my ex-wife Lorena and her lover, Evandro. The people you researched on the internet. Yes. It was these two that you know made me suffer and caused me so much pain. Why, all know my story before I got involved with your mom. So it's no secret. I was married and years later I was betrayed by my ex-wife, and I met your mother at this moment after the pain and sadness I went through. Just like your mother, I hate lying and the truth must be told. Yes. It was my ex and her lover. Those two beggars." The three remain open-mouthed and are amazed at the confidence in Mariano. The four hugged, and that ended up strengthening the relationship with the family even more. Myra says, "They are paying for all the bad things they did to you, father. Now they're just getting the bill." And Diego adds, "They just reaped what they sowed. They deserve each other, Dad. Now they must be seeing what they did to you." And Carolina still completes, "As I told you years ago, love. In this life everything is paid. Your ex and her lover are now reaping what they sowed." Mariano then speaks with emotion. "Thank you, my children and Carolina, the loves of my life. You came into my life at a time of suffering and anguish that I went through. You, together with my children Daniel and Aurora, are my life. Daniel and Aurora will know about it, but in the right time." Carolina, Diego and Myra are at Mariano's side, and the alliance as a family was firm and strong, and the mutual trust. One day, Mariano was leaving work to go home. Before getting into his car and waiting for his wife because Carolina would be coming soon after, he was just finishing organizing some documents. A few minutes went by and again Mariano saw the two homeless Lorena and Evandro begging on the street. Mariano kept thinking to himself, "How life is full of surprises, these two can't even be separated. They're like dogs that won't let go of the bone. As my son Diego says, they deserve themselves. It's hard to believe there are bad people like that in the world we live in." Mariano, this time, looked firmly into the eyes of Lorena and Evandro. The homeless couple lowered their heads and leaned hand in hand as a way of showing that they were firm even at rock bottom. But deep down in their hearts, they were burning with envy and anger to see Mariano happy and radiant. In Lorena's mind, it didn't even pass that Mariano was married to an incredible woman, the stepfather of 2 stepchildren and the father of 2 legitimate children, which would be a total humiliation for Lorena if she knew about it. On another day, when Mariano was buying school supplies for his daughter Aurora and leaving the store, he hears a familiar voice. It was Lorena who was there. Mariano, with a smile on his face, says, "Lorena, it's been a long time, huh? What are you doing here and where is your husband?" And a nervous Lorena replied, "Evandro is picking up cans to sell, Mariano." He lets me back with you. I leave Evandro now if you want. Just one word from you and I'll drop him now. And Mariano replied, Lorena, you're still the same gold digger as before. After all these years, do you want to come back? It's too late. Thanks to you leaving my life, I found true love. I am married to a wonderful woman and I am very happy. I am a stepfather of 2 stepchildren and I have beautiful children. I'm so sorry, Lorraine. The queue moved and for the better. Shocked, Lorena says. No, I thought we loved each other. That can't be possible. Mariano replies, You know, Lorena, I even thank you for leaving my life. I found an amazing family and I'm doing great. What about you who traded me for an adventure with your boss? Hard to believe that a beggar like you was once my wife and her lover was once a successful businessman and business owner. I can only feel sorry for you. I loved you. I wanted to have a family with you and you didn't want to. And a widow with 2 children gave me all this in double, and today she is the woman of my life and I love my stepchildren and my children with Carolina. I'm happy and very happy. Lorena cries with frustration and Mariano replies, Lorena, if you hadn't left my life I would never have met the love of my life, Carolina, my heart children Diego and Myra, and my blood children Daniel and Aurora. I thank God and life every day for putting Carolina and her children in my path. Now go your way with your lover Evandro and I'll be happy with my family. Mariano went to his car and left without looking back. Lorena is frustrated at having given happiness to a widow with 2 children. And he followed with his only option that was with her, Evandro. Arriving home, Mariano told his wife Carolina everything, without hiding anything from the unexpected encounter with Lorena. Carolina is proud of her husband and happy with his confidence, so they hug and kiss warmly. A week later, Mariano, Carolina, Myra, Diego, Daniel and Aurora go to lunch at a restaurant and the 6 of them are very happy. And together the family was strong, united and very happy. Lorena and Evandro, on the other hand, were homeless and practically sank into drink and mud and most likely lost their minds and perhaps had no idea that life had exacted a toll on everything they had done to Mariano. The bankruptcy of Evandro's company after the blow it suffered from employees practically must have driven them both crazy. And Mariano happy and strong with his children Myra and Diego, the love of his life Carolina and his legitimate children Daniel and Aurora. Seeing that life had rewarded his faithfulness, love and loyalty to those who truly love him. Moral of the story: sometimes there are people so bad that even suffering the law of return, they don't think about others and rethink their mistakes. And they don't always show regret. This shows that they are empty human beings, devoid of reason and thoughts. Truth and trust must always be the foundation of a family. Speak good or bad about someone, but speak the truth no matter how naked and raw it is.